Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, look, we're going to spend some quality time, talking about Kevin Warsh as the new Federal Reserve chairman. I mean, it's so important in terms of the economy and the stock market and, of course, interest rates. And I understand many of my listeners, you're not professional investors or economists, but hang in there because, this is very, very important and will determine, I think, the economy and maybe the midterm elections as well. And as I said at the outset, I am a strong supporter of Warsh. Known him for years, interviewed him many times on the TV show, and I believe he has his principles on the economy are spot on, and he is pro-growth, and that's going to be very important. Anyway, let me bring in my dear friend, mentor, Arthur Laffer, who's the chairman and chief economist of Laffer Associates and recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I was in the room when Mr. Trump did that. In fact, I sort of crying while I watched it. Anyway, Art's new book with Steve Moore, The Trump Economic Miracle, and the plan to unleash prosperity again. And my great friend John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest. And I'll say to listeners, the Breitbart Business Digest, it's a daily. It's just phenomenal. You got to read it. If you're at all interested in the stock market or the economy, you got to read it. Anyway, I go to Breitbart early in the morning for the headlines. So, Art Laffer, it's a pleasure. And
my pleasure, Larry. You know you're my hero. So just all the lovely things you say about me. I wish my mom and dad could hear all that. My mom would have actually believed it. But just joking, Larry.
Yes, she would have believed it. All right, we all believe it. You taught me economics. Very important. Give me just 30, 40 seconds, Art, on Kevin Warsh. Your impression.
Well, Kevin Warsh has a great personality, number one. He gets along with people. He's nice. He's not offensive. He's got a lot of experience at the Fed. So on a social level and on a professional level, he is exceptionally well qualified to be there. In addition, he is a lawyer, trained a lawyer, so he knows how to deal with a lot of the other issues of the Fed as well. And in that sense, he's also very competent. And he's very good in economics, Larry, and he understands the difference between supply-side economics and Keynesian economics, especially as it pertains to monetary policy. For example, you and I have for a long time been talking about how economic growth does not cause inflation. It doesn't. When you increase the supply of goods and services, their prices fall, they don't rise. The Fed has this all backwards. What he also understands is the way you beat lower interest rates and beat inflation is not by buying bonds in the open market. It's by selling bonds in the open market and contracting the Fed's balance sheet. That is the only way you can really get control of inflation and thereby bring down the inflation premium on interest rates. He understands all that, Larry. And, he's just phenomenal at it, and I couldn't be happier.
First of all, thank you for all that. It's a great summary. I just want to say to listeners, again, who may not be, totally familiar with all the jargon, just think of it. Kevin Warsh has said this so many times. He said, slow down and stop the printing press, the creating money. All right. That's a simple way, and it's an oversimplification, but it's useful. Stop printing all this money, which is basically financing big government socialism and all these programs that have given us budget deficits of $2 trillion a year under Joe Biden. Stop it. Don't nurture it. Don't accommodate it. Stop it. And when you stop it, inflation come down and interest rates will come down. Now, John Carney, I want to talk to you. You're a peace pantsum. And you're saying here, let's see, Kevin Warsh is a threat to working people, and he's too much of an inflation hawk. It's very interesting. I didn't know that you had these views.
So to be clear, Larry, that's not my view. I'm quoting a critic, Neil Dutta.
Yeah.
In that piece. And I wanted to give air because, look, there's I understand why some people are a little bit nervous. We already saw a lot of that outpouring. Look, you and Art Laffer are enough for me, so you guys have sold me on this. But when the announcement was made, we saw people like Jason Furman, the Harvard law professor who was an Obama administration advisor, Ben Bernanke, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. All of these guys were praising him. And I think that made a lot of people nervous, right? Because those guys are not on our side. They're not supply siders. They don't agree with us. And they were, they were saying, this is a great choice. So that made people nervous. And look, Kevin Warsh does have a history of being hawkish on inflation. But I think, and I said this on the television show yesterday, I think people are wrong when they think that Donald Trump is not hawkish on inflation. Of course he is. He hates inflation. We had almost no inflation in his first term. His point about cutting interest rates is that inflation is coming down. When he was objecting to the Fed hiking during his first term, the whole point was there was no inflation and they were hiking. So he doesn't want the Fed to use its models, which tell them that, that lowering immigration will be inflationary, that tariffs will be inflationary. He says that if that's what's holding back the Fed, they absolutely should be cutting. And he also, and we heard this from people like Stephen Byron as well, that if you are raising productivity, you also can be lowering interest rates because that is, as our Laffer just told us, when you increase the supply of goods and services, then you have less inflation. So I actually don't think Kevin Warsh is this guy who, the way he's been portrayed as, as some sort of uber hawk who won't cut rates. I think he's actually on board with Donald Trump when it comes to this.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. That is what you said on the TV show yesterday, and that's why I was a little bit surprised. I don't know. Neil Dutta will be Neil Dutta. I know who he is. He's actually been a guest on the show every now and then. Maybe I'll have him back and we can debate it.
I'd like to give a little bit of both sides sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's worth, letting people know that there are critics out there and let them see what the arguments are.
I think, Art, I say this to both of you, the media will try to make this into a battle. Like, oh my God, he's an inflation fighter and Trump isn't, and so therefore he's going to have trouble, or he's going to have trouble inside the Federal Reserve, et cetera. They're always looking for angles. But, Arthur, to come back to your point, Kevin's going to be the first guy, I think, since Greenspan, maybe since Volcker. You and I liked Volcker's commodity price rule. I know that Kevin watches the commodity indexes as potential inflation indicators. He keeps an eye on M2. I know that's old-fashioned, but he keeps an eye on M2. And he keeps an eye on the dollar. He's a king dollar guy. And I think that discipline informs him. And Art, I think that's what we have not had that in 20 years. And he doesn't want any more QE. And I say that to John Carney too. We're going to get rid of QE including QT, including buying 40 or 60 billion of treasury bills. That stuff's going to be out the window. And it should be, Arthur. It's all garbage.
Yeah, it is, Larry. But the difference between why people are critics of Warsh or they like Warsh depends upon the model of how they see the economy operating. And by the way, he's really good and right on. And I was so glad the quote you had there was not his, but was someone else's.
Right.
I really loved it. But here we have, how do you bring inflation down? The Keynesians say you do it by buying bonds. That bids the price of bonds up, and interest rates fall. And the balance sheet of the Fed expands. From 2008 until 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the Fed expanded the balance sheet from $850 billion to $9.7 trillion. That's a huge increase in liquidity, which has caused inflation, which in turn causes higher interest rates. That's two very different models. Should the Fed buy bonds to lower interest rates, or should they sell bonds to lower interest rates? Now, the Keynesians say they should buy bonds, and I think the Keynesians are totally wrong. The Keynesians don't really even understand the theory that they're operating on. What you want to do is sell bonds and get king dollar, get stable prices, and then you will have much lower interest rates, which is exactly what Kevin Warsh, you and I and Steve Moore and John Carney and the others understand fully well. But these people at the Fed today aren't trained in good economics, so they just sit there and make mistake after mistake just the same way they make mistake after mistake on fiscal policy. They think government spending stimulates the economy. That's stupid. Have you ever heard of a poor person spending himself into wealth? It makes no sense, but there they go.
You know, it's we're on radio, so this is all being taped. Because Arthur, that was a wonderful riff, tremendous riff. You know, John Carney, I think you agree with most of what Art said, but I think the battle here, you know, Kevin Warsh is well schooled in the principles of sound money that Art just described. I think the battle is going to be bureaucratically to get the Fed to change its models and its thinking. And it's not, John, you know, I worked at the Fed, but I've also, you know, I used to have lunch with Jay Powell every couple of weeks. The Fed, it's the board staff that you have to deal with. That's where the power is.
That's right. And I think so first I just wanted to mention on QE, one of the craziest things that I think has happened in my lifetime is the fact that QE was originally launched as a temporary emergency program. And then without any vote, without any Congress, decide, when we make major changes in how the American economy works in a democracy, that should happen because of a vote, or at least because of public deliberation. We slid from emergency bond buying by the Fed right after the financial crisis to a permanently larger Fed balance sheet with almost no public discussion about how that would work, almost no debate. People like you, people like Art Laffer weren't even invited to give the other side of it. You're absolutely right about the battle being with the Fed models. The good news is that the chairman of the Federal Reserve is the boss of all of those guys running the models.
That's right.
They report to him.
That's right. And only
the rest
him.
of the board can't do anything about it.
You know, if
he can tell them what to do.
If Jay Powell thinks he's going to sit around for a couple of years as a governor, he could do that, but he won't have any help. You don't even get an assistant unless the chairman tells the staff to help one of the governors. You don't get anything. I mean, it's a very weird system. I knew it when Wayne Angell and Manley Johnson were governors because they were very dear friends of mine. I used to go and they had to fight to get one deputy to help them with research.
So interest rates should be lower. The balance sheet should be smaller. And Larry, those two things are related to each other.
Terrific stuff. Arthur, you got a lot. That was an interview I did with him. I don't know. I think it was this past summer. Actually, we got a second. Let's hit the second quote too. Hang on.
So my simple version of this is run the printing press a little bit less, let the balance sheet come down, let Secretary Besson handle the fiscal accounts, and in so doing, you can have materially lower interest rates.
John Carney, I'm buying it. I'm buying into it. Just what he said. Stay with it. It's like,
it's great, Larry. And by the way, I'm going to forward that clip to his critic, Neil Duther, you quoted earlier, because that's really important. He's not calling for higher rates. He's calling for a return to the successful monetary policy that we followed up until we exploded the balance sheet higher under Bernanke and Yellen and then Jay Powell.
He's moving it.
Exactly right.
He's moving it back to, some combination of Volcker and Greenspan. And, we had 25, 30 years of price stability, 2% or less. And then, and I think Art, QE is, dead and buried. No more. I mean, he turned against QE when he was at the Fed. He was in favor of the first one to stop the absolute catastrophe. But when Bernanke went again, Kevin, who was a governor and was close to Bernanke, he rebelled against it, wrote an op-ed piece. And Bernanke didn't take it personally, but I think QE is dead, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it should have been dead before it was even started, by the way, Larry. It was never even important in the crisis there. It really wasn't. But we did it, and it is dead, and Bernanke should take it personally because he had a bad model of running the Fed.
Yeah.
His textbook was perfect on. Bernanke's textbook on balance sheets, money, and inflation was exactly right. And then when he gets head of the Fed, he decides to wing it, and he does everything the wrong way. And Bernanke started this, Yellen made it worse, and Powell just pushed it to the moon. And we're hopefully going to come back to sound money the way the U.S. has been run over some considerable periods of time.
Bernanke, it's so interesting. It's about Kevin Warsh, not Bernanke. But he was the chairman of the Princeton Economics Department, and he was a Republican, which is incredible. And he was a Friedmanite, basically, Milton Friedman. And he wrote extensively about the Great Depression, and talking about, how the money supply was shrinking in those days. And you're right. And then he goes into the Federal Reserve Board and starts applying this stuff. He went crazy with QE and QT. And I doubt if any Ivy League college has a Republican as head of the economics department, but he was. I'll give him some credit. John Carney.
That's only officially, Larry. That's only officially. He was not what you and I believe is good economist. He just wasn't. There are some Republicans that are really off base, and he was one of them. Sorry, I'm a Yaley, by the way, myself, just for the record. I know you're Princeton, too, so you stand up for him. We Yaleys have to know better.
I used to talk. I knew him when he was there. Anyway, let's get off this. John Carney here today. You read the op-ed. It's really interesting. Donald J. Trump : My tariffs have brought America back, in the Wall Street Journal. And basically, Amy's telling the Journal editorial board, I was right and you're wrong. John, did you read it this morning? I hope you did.
I did. It was fantastic. He has been right this entire time. It's so good to actually see them making forcefully making the case like this. I think it's really important. The Wall Street Journal editorial board owes the president an apology. They've been wrong the entire time. One more thing I wanted to say about Kevin Warsh is one great thing he could do is create job opportunities for all of those conservative Republican economists who have been shut out of the upper echelons of economics departments. Look, if he hires on the right economists, that opens up career paths. It will draw more conservative. Because, frankly, if I were a young man entering academia right now, I would be worried about going into an economics department because your future is bleak. Warsh can help fix that by hiring the right people into the Federal Reserve and making them the Fed economists, replace all those guys who are there now.
Can I respond to John?
Wait, I just want to say, my first job was at the New York Fed. I went from the Princeton Graduate School to the New York Fed. Just saying. Go ahead, Art. I got a minute left.
Yeah, I just want to first say, John, you are a young man. And I really appreciate when you're 85 as I am, you are a young man. And I would do the other side of the balance sheet more than I would the side that you're looking at. There are 300 economists hired there who do absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing productively. We need to get rid of that balance sheet as well and get rid of 250 of them. If you need 50, God knows why you'd even need 50.
All right.
You should probably do it with 10 and just do it and just run the Fed that way. All those people do is lead to mission drift.
Yeah, and that's you're right. You're 1,000% right. Anyway, that was Art Laffer. That was John Carney. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much. Folks, stick around. We're going to talk to Steve Forbes and Mike Faulkner in the next segment. I'm Kudlow. Please, it's great fun talking about Warsh.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.